I'm Aviva Peisach, and I'm an ex-engineering guild manager and also the head of identity. Thank you. It's an intimate atmosphere, but you can still cheer. You're heard louder. And you might know me from this stage or similar stages where I usually talk about software resilience, production reliability. So you might be wondering why this time I took upon myself this explosive, sensitive topic as diversity and gender bias. Well, the answer to it, as the answer to everything nowadays, is AI. How come, though? That's because I believe that as machines are getting better at being machines, we need to get better at being human and learn how to work better together, changing positions. Because only together we win. So when we typically talk about diversity, we try to imagine this perfect target world where everybody feels like they belong, equally represented, generating creative ideas together, amazing products, and the stock skyrockets, right? Or that just talking about diversity is actually making it worse because we make people feel uncomfortable. Or maybe you think that there is an issue with diversity, but it's a culture, education thing, something for governments and HR to deal with, but there's nothing that we can actually do about it, right? So if you're feeling any of these reactions, or maybe all of them, you're not alone. These are very typical reactions to talking about diversity, because diversity touches the core of how we see ourselves as equal and fair. So what I want us to do in the remaining 20 minutes is try to diffuse some of these concerns and understand where we really are in the high-tech world in terms of diversity and in Wix. And most importantly, gain some practical tools on how each and every one of us can make a difference in the day-to-day of diversity. So we can build winning teams together. And an important note, this talk focuses on gender diversity, but same principles apply to any kind of diversity. So you can just copy and paste. Okay, so we'll start with my journey into diversity, into the world of diversity, because I started on the opposing side as well. So hi again. Can everybody see the screen? I'm Aviva. I'm the daughter of Aaron and Anna. Both were electrical engineers that also became software engineers. And there's a saying that goes, you can't be what you can't see. Well, in my case, I've seen, and thus I've become. I got my first computer when I was 12, I started coding games, and I started in high school majoring in computer science, then in the university, started my career as a developer, then a team lead, then a senior engineering manager in many startups and enterprises. And it's not that I didn't notice that women were a minority in tech. Both in my class, we were 8 girls out of 40 students. In university, we were less than 5% women in my class. And throughout my career, I was more than once the only woman in the room. So it's not that I didn't realize that that was the case, but I've never seen it as an issue. I just took it as it is. I never stopped to ask, like, why is it the case? And I continued with the belief that was embedded in me by my parents that all I need to do is work hard, right? And eventually my skill and hard work will prevail, regardless of any circumstance or gender. So I continued with this mindset for many years, till I got to Wix. And in Wix, I started hearing a lot of talk about diversity. And the way it made me feel is very similar, okay, to the objections we talked about before. The tipping point, though, was when a person from the academy came by. She was organizing a meetup for women in tech, and she asked me to come by and talk. And I was like, yes. And I was like, why are you doing a women-only meetup? What is it that you want me to talk about? And she said, you know, how you broke the glass ceiling and succeeded. And I was thinking, but I don't believe in glass ceilings. And as I was feeling angrier and angrier, I understood that this is something I need to look into. So instead of saying no way, I said, yes, I'll do it. And I went on an exploration journey. So I went on and researched a lot of studies and researches on diversity. I also had lots of talks with my women colleagues, to whom I've never talked about being a woman in engineering up till that point. And I reached several revelations, which I'll share with you. Hang on tight, it ain't gonna be pretty. So the first revelation was that there is an actual issue, and the numbers show it. We'll see numbers soon. So it wasn't just my experience, this was a real problem. I also realized that the fact that I don't feel it as an issue doesn't mean that others don't. And many other women felt uncomfortable being the minority in the room. When I was talking to one of my women colleagues, she was telling me that she felt the same way. She also didn't feel there's an issue until she got a chance to work in a place that had 50-50% allocation of women and men. And she said that the atmosphere was so different from what we're used to that she can't even explain it. It was safer, more creative. And then I realized that I can't imagine something I didn't experience, but an alternative exists and we can aspire to it. But the most painful lesson learned was that what I was feeling actually had a name. It's called the second generation gender bias. This is women who succeeded and therefore don't believe there is an issue, and therefore they don't reach out and help women at the beginning of their journey. And this was truly devastating for me because I realized that I had this huge blind spot and I didn't help the people who needed me the most. So for those who know me, and maybe you've seen this in practice now, for me there's a very short distance between a problem and a solution or action, and therefore I became very active in the realm of diversity. I've led and been part of many communities, women communities, mentorship, and many other activities where I learned some of the best practices I'll be sharing with you today. Okay, so let's take a harsh look at reality. The numbers I'm going to show you is from the Israeli high-tech industry, but the same applies to all Western countries, Europe and the US. So we start off as fairly equal. We have 50% girls majoring in math in high school. But then if we look at the computer science, the numbers drop, and we have only 36% representation. And the numbers continue to drop up till the workplace in our careers, where we have 27% women working in our core R&D roles. And as we continue and step in our career, we see the numbers continually dropping, okay, as we get higher. If you're curious about what's going on in Wix, where we're so focused on diversity, well, the situation is not much better. We're better at some stats and worse than others. So you can see that we have only 21% of women in R&D, but we have also 21% of women in R&D management, which is better. But we still have a lot of work to do. And if we look at the trend, so over the last 10 years, there has been only an increase of 4% in women in R&D roles in the Israeli industry. But if we look at the trends in Wix, this is a bit more optimistic because we can see that places where we put our focus on, we can see a faster and more dramatic increase, okay? So if we stop and ask ourselves, why is this the case? Why do we have less women in R&D? So there are many reasons, and it's a broad landscape. We'll only be scratching the surface. So historically speaking, during the 50s and 60s, this was the time of mainframes and punch cards. Women were actually a major part of the workforce. However, in the 80s, when the personal computer was first launched, it was decided to be marketed as a toy. And since toys are gender-specific by definition, it was decided to market them as boy toys. Therefore, more boys purchased computers, were exposed to computers, continued with computers in their studies and in their career. Also, one of the root causes is our education. We teach our boys to take risks and our girls to be more risk-averse. You can see it in playgrounds around you, where boys are encouraged to climb the highest tree and girls are really encouraged to be careful. And because taking risks builds confidence, what studies show that there's also a confidence gap between men and women, where men tend to overestimate their skills and women tend to underestimate it. And if you're asking yourself, okay, this all happened in the 80s, But we've come a long way. Why don't the numbers change? Well, this is because of the numbers vicious cycle. There is less women in tech, therefore there is less role models, okay? You can't be what you can't see, remember that. Women feel insecure being a minority and therefore tend to leave. And we have a tendency to promote and hire people like us or people like we see around us, okay? Therefore, less women are hired and promoted and the cycle continues. Okay, hopefully we're depressed enough. Okay, but we're not doomed because there's a lot that we can do. And to understand what we can do, I want to start with an inspirational story. So I mentioned earlier that we're working a lot to change the balance and to change diversity. And we decided to start with the juniors program, okay, because this is one of the easier ways to get more female candidates. So we worked hard. We got 50-50% candidates, men and women. And they came in the morning to do our on-site test, all happy and enthusiastic. However, at the end of the day, what we realized is that only 30% of the women submitted the actual test, okay, while 70% of the men did, which was very disappointing. So when we did a retrospective, a post-mortem of this event, what we realized is several things. First of all, that the test was actually impossible to complete in the 3 hours that were given. Okay, we just didn't proof it enough. And what happened is that many more of the women didn't feel comfortable submitting their test because it wasn't completed. Okay, much more than men. So what we realized that what we actually did is filtered by confidence and not by actual competence. And in that cycle, we had eventually 33% women representation in that course. However, once we realized this was the issue, it was very easy to fix. So we changed the assignment to be possible, still very hard, but possible to complete in 3 hours. We made submission mandatory, regardless if you completed it or not, and we communicated expectations with the candidates that we expect everyone to submit, and we're looking not only on the completion, but on the quality of the task itself. And in that round, we got to 45% women representation in the course. You can cheer, like, to release some of the tension of the non-working cliques. Okay, so what I want us to take away from this story is, first of all, that it's possible to make a difference, and fixes could be really easy. It's not about lowering the bar, right? It's just clearing our lens and making sure that we look at actual value, okay, and not noise, and therefore we actually hire the best people. So what we'll do now is go over 4 areas, okay, in our day-to-day. We'll talk about the hurdles and the possible fixes where each and every one of us can make an impact on diversity and inclusion. So let's start with hiring. I'm also already post-traumatic. Okay, so let's start with hiring. The hurdles in hiring is that there's usually a smaller funnel of women, okay, women CVs. The fix is very easy. It's going out, reaching out to creative sources like women communities, women forums. I don't know if you're aware of the statistics, but women apply only if they meet at least 90% of the job requirement, while men are looking to meet how much? Between 50 and 60%, okay? So what we can do is just make sure that our job specs are realistic and don't contain any dream requirements. Some women feel uncomfortable being the only woman in the room, and what we can do is strive to make sure that we have women interviewers. And women tend to undersell. We tend to speak in we rather than I, and be more concerned about showing off as being braggish. So what we can do on our end is just be aware of that during our CV screening, during our interviews, and during our tests, and make sure that we are actually testing for actual competence and value and ignore marketing noise. But inclusiveness has effect. Can you close the door? Thank you. Okay. The video is not usable from the beginning, right? We're not concerned about that. Okay. So it doesn't need to be things dramatic like hiring. It could be also on our day-to-day in meetings, where in meetings tend to reward the people who speak the loudest or the most. And I don't know if you ever witnessed such a scenario, but there could be cases where someone would suggest an idea, maybe quietly, more quietly, let's call her Sharon, and be totally ignored. 5 minutes later, someone else would suggest the same idea and get all the credit. So what we can easily do is, first of all, normalize speaking, making sure everybody speaks. We do it in demo meetings and sprint meetings today, right? Where we have a round where everybody has to present. Or we can just specifically ask the people that are less vocal for their feedback or input. And we can also be allies. So if someone suggested a good idea, just follow up on her idea and give her credit. When it comes to promotions, the hurdles are a visibility bias, where we usually reward the people who are, again, more vocal about what they do or more vocal about their will to be promoted, and not necessarily to the people who deserve it. There's also, studies show that there's also a self-promotion gap, where men tend to promote themselves, push themselves towards promotion, and women wait to deserve a promotion. And because our criteria for promotions is very vague, these biases really can come into effect. And another thing we tend to do as managers is opportunity starvation, like giving the same exact people an opportunity again and again, instead of spreading the opportunity between people. So the way to fix it is also fairly easy. As managers, we need to normalize promotion discussions, make sure that we talk to each and one of our people and understand what is their will in terms of their career. We need to make sure criteria is as explicit as possible and to make sure that we really look for impact, okay, and not marketing noise. And avoid starvation by making sure that we have a rotation of opportunities, okay, not granting them to the same people. So this is a toolkit that managers can do, but you don't need to be a manager to help out. Any one of us can mentor anyone or sponsor. Sponsorship is mentorship plus providing people with actual opportunities, connecting the dots between capable people and opportunities. And last but not least is our day-to-day. We really want to make sure that everybody feels like they belong, right? The hurdles to that could be non-inclusive social activities, like fun days that are near the pool, okay, or the seaside, where a swimsuit dress code is required, and some people might not feel very comfortable with that. And what we can do is just be aware and make sure we create activities that are fun for all, ask people for their ideas as well. Also, another hurdle is sometimes non-tech work, like taking notes or creating these fun activities, fall on the same people again and again. And to avoid that, all we need to do is rotate these roles like note-taking or just asking who's willing to do that. Sometimes non-inclusive atmosphere could happen just within the room or the corridor where we have conversations that assume that everybody has the same background, which is not necessarily the case, and people could be left aside, feel like they're left aside. And what we can do here is being an ally, noticing that someone is aside of the conversation and helping them get back into it. Easy, right? Okay. We managed to get to the almost end, which seemed impossible, I think, 20 minutes ago. Okay, so what I hope our takeaways are that, first of all, we realize that there is a problem, whether we like it or not. The numbers show it. And that there is a lot we can do about it. It's about clearing our lens, okay, making sure that we look for real value, and creating an environment where skillful people can actually show their skill and succeed. It's also about being an ally and reaching out and helping the people that need us. And it's not about being cautious or not making mistakes. We'll make mistakes all the time. It's about being aware, noticing when our lenses are biased, okay, or if someone feels left aside, and doing small steps to adjust and fix. So, reminding you again, okay, we talked about gender diversity, but all you need to do is copy-paste for any kind of diversity. So even if you took one tool out of today, apply it on one person, you've already made a difference. And let's keep in mind that these differences, these small changes accumulate and make a huge impact. So, let's change the world together. Thank you very much, and feel free to reach out.